Well, hello there, friends. How's it going? So glad it's Thursday. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you had a good day. I hope you're ready to have some fun drawing. I hope you have some pen and ink possibly on hand, at hand, hand. Not sure how to say this. Anyways, I hope you have some pen and ink with you. And if not, you can totally just draw with pencil as well. And let me just see. Okay, I see myself on both screens, so we're good to go. Well, first of all, hey, what's up? How's it going? Secondly, if you're here for the very first time, welcome. My name is Carolyn Peters. I'm the owner of Kira Studios, and that's where I teach classical drawing skills so artists can get a really solid footing from which to explore their creative voice from. And along those lines, I offer these weekly sketch sessions so you have a place to report to. And with every week, I bring a different subject matter to you. Like I have some nice reference images that we can all draw together from. And on those references, or with those references, comes a specific topic that I focus on, like a certain lesson that that you can sink your teeth into. And like that, it kind of becomes like the perfect combination, at least in my mind, between a workout place, where you like work out certain skills, and a playground where you get to explore and not take yourself too seriously and produce some throwaway drawings or keepers, you never know. But kind of like finding that mix of like working hard, working something out, risking failure as you're doing so, and risking also a next level of mastery because you're trying something hard and new. So that's why I offer these weekly sketch sessions, and I hope they're useful to you. And this week, the subject matter is inanimate things, and what I'm particularly focusing on is root vegetables. So you might be thinking, root vegetables, they're not that exciting, and maybe I would have agreed with you a while ago, but I want to change your mind tonight. In particular because the lesson that I'm putting on top of the subject matter is cross contours. So if you've ever seen one of Leonardo da Vinci's beautiful pen and ink drawings, like there's some pen and ink drawings that he did of a Madonna's head. And if you look closer, you'll see these lines that kind of go across the form. So he's a master at using this idea of cross contours. And another person who's much more loose and much more fun and playful, but equally masterful, would be Heinrich Klei, who uses cross contours to give his quick sketches the sense of volume and three-dimensionality that's very effortless. So focusing on root vegetables will be the perfect subject matter to practice that because they're simple, just kind of rounded and blobby, yet they're complex enough. They have little dips and bumps that we can use to get better at creating cross contours that are not just so generic. So that's what we're doing tonight. I hope that sounds good to you. And before we jump in now, I'm gonna prepare you. I'm not just gonna like let you jump in without any guidance. Let me mention a couple of things. So the first thing when you begin your drawing is you want to think, like once you have the shape, let's say, you want to think about what's the axis of my object. So if you don't really know what I mean when I say the axis, I brought a prop and here it is. And this prop is what will help you understand this idea of an axis. An axis is this imaginary rod, or in this instance, a true rod, that you drive through the core of it. And so when you draw your shape, or once you've drawn your shape, you want to become clear on, okay, is my imaginary rod leaning one way or another? How much so? Or is it truly upright, or is it truly horizontal? So that's the first thing. So we call that the 2D orientation of your item. So 2D just means like windshield wiper, left to right, right? So this is always the first starting point. Now the second thing that you want to then become aware of is this axis. Is this equally, are the ends of it equally far away from you? Or is one end closer to you and one end further away? Those are the first two things to pay attention to. The 2D orientation and then the 3D orientation. Is one end closer than the other? Now, the other thing that I highly recommend is if you don't have a physical item in front of you, grab something cylindrical. So I have this little piece of pipe from like sprinklers outdoors, but you can use like the inside of a toilet paper roll. But you see how I have like a red, I don't know if you can see this, there's a red rim and a black rim. This is a really useful tool to have because it'll help you understand when you wrap your wrapping lines, if you need to arc them up or if you need to arc them down. So the thought experiment that we're doing with this, once you've kind of thought about this axis, right, is we're snapping imaginary, I don't know if you can see, imaginary rubber bands. In this case, I put a real rubber band around these items that you're drawing. So for us, it's going to be roots. And so you now have to become interested in what do these rubber bands look like as we get towards the edges. Because you'll notice that certain times they'll arc down and other times they'll arc up. So that is really the thought experiment of a cross contour. So I'll say it again. The thing that we do when we draw cross contours is we imagine that we have rubber bands snapped around the item. Now there is a rule though that these rubber bands follow. These rubber bands, they are always perpendicular, meaning 90 degrees to the central axis. So this is why the central axis, becoming aware of it, is so pivotal. Yeah. So find your central axis and then imagine, okay, if I snap a rubber band around it, which edge is closer to me? So that's as much as I'm going to say without any imagery. I'm going to flip cameras. I'm going to talk about two more elements that will be useful, and then just kind of throw everything back out of your brain and just draw. And hopefully some of the stuff that I said will come in handy. And if not, you're just enjoying your drawing time. So let me flip the camera real quick. Okay, I'm gonna make sure that this is focusing. Okay, so a little bit more on the theory of cross contours. Again, this is where we're starting, right? We're beginning with like a kind of blobby shape. And then we're gonna drive our imaginary rod through. And we're interested in this orientation. How much is this thing leaning? Is it really upright or is it at an angle? And it's useful to think of it as a clock face. Like if this was the arrow of or the handle of a clock, what time would it be? So this is our starting point. Now notice the difference between these two. This one looks like the top is closer to me. So if you're coming back to our real life example, in this drawing, the vegetable, the root, is having this orientation. This end is closer to me, this end is further away from me. And notice how I translated it. I'm looking at the edge of my rubber band here. See how it's arcing up? My lines are arcing up. So the orange lines are the ones that are closer to me, as in like that's the part of the rubber band that's closer to me. That's what I'm emphasizing. My hand is still drawing the whole ellipse. I'm emphasizing the part closest to me. Now over here, I did it the other way around. I drew it like this. Oops, let me move it over here so you can actually see. I drew it like this. So see again, looking at the edges of your imaginary rubber band, it's curving down. And the more extreme this angle is, like if I really turn this at me, the more rounded, the more circular your rubber bands will become. And that is based on the simple understanding of perspective, that if you have something rounded, if that rounded thing is, let me do something different, something black. This rounded thing is facing you head on, it looks like a true circle. But as soon as it turns away from you in space, see how we're losing the circle? It's becoming an ellipse. So that's perspective for you. If we see things straight on, we see their true circular nature. As soon as they turn in this perspective, we lose that circle and it becomes a foreshortened circle, which we call, the art nerds, we call them ellipses. Okay, so last thing, and then we'll dive into the drawing, I promise. So these cross contours, they go across the form, perpendicular to our axis. Now you can add one more set of cross contours, and those are the ones that begin and end at your axes, entry and exit points. So they begin here at the North Pole and they head to the South Pole. Begin at the North Pole, head to the South Pole. And wherever your center of vision is, like where your eye lands on the thing, they'll kind of spread left and right from there like a slinky will. So here again, begin at the North and at the South. See, they're all funneling here to this South Pole. All right, so I hope this is going to be useful for as we're diving into the drawing. I timed our drawing so we have short, really kind of brief warm-up poses, 2 minutes in the beginning, and then they'll lengthen out and you'll see the timer indicated on the video. I'll be drawing with a dipping pen and ink, and if you're curious about this, I have a Nico G-nib on here, and it's just like a regular pen holder, and the ink I'm using is walnut ink. And so for these brief ones, I'm just going to be focusing on shapes, and then as we have more time, I'll start to put in some of the cross contours. So here we go. Hope you're ready. So since I have like this arrangement, I like to first look at the overall shape of the arrangement, and then I'll look at the individual items. And I'm going to try my hardest not to become all perfectionist about this and trying to make this a beautiful drawing. I'm loving the radishes. I'm loving these radishes. So it's going to be hard not to get too nitpicky about them. So I'm trying for these gestures to see if I can capture their character without getting too specific. I'm allowing myself to stay playful and maybe a little bit inaccurate. And so here, I don't know if you're already noticing this, but the radishes, they're so great to practice cross contours with because they already have these striations around them that help you see those cross contours better. Ooh, fast. Okay, let's do the next set. So again, another 2 minute. Beginning with my overall arrangement, it's kind of almost like a U shape. Drawing 3 little blobs at first, and to me they look like mice. And so this is another reason why I love working with root vegetables, because they're so blobby and yet they have so much character. So like pears are the same way, and so you can use them to practice, this very technical lesson with them. But then, if you're like sick and tired of it and you just want to have fun, you can change your focus and see, okay, like what does this remind me of? And you can start to imagineer. Like I don't know if this is a real word, but I like to use the word imagineering, like taking something that's right in front of you and then imagine, okay, this could be a little mouse. Like this guy over here to me looks like a mouse that has its tail up in the air. And, you could start like making shit up, so to speak. So So I don't know if you can hear this, but that scratch sound from the traditional dipping nib, I just love that sound. It's very soothing to me. And the only problem is that usually when I use a dipping pen, I like to be on a level surface, and because the ink flows better if you have a level surface, but I'm on a slanted surface. That's just the way my studio is set up here. So I have to hold my pen a little bit funky to let the ink still flow. Okay, so we have a little bit longer now. Now we can probably start getting into some of the cross contour. And we'll see, usually if I have a short pose, I go directly into my ink. But if I want to make a more finished drawing, or if I want to have a bit more control over the outcome of my drawing, I always begin with a pencil under drawing. And I know this is like for some pen and ink nerds, like sacrilegious, but I think you'd be a fool not to, because I mean, if you think about it, all the comic book artists, they do their under drawing in pencil as well, and then they ink it. So what's the big deal? You know, just allow yourself the under drawing, get your shape set up, and then do your beautiful ink work on top of it. Okay, so I have my shapes. I'm not trying to do too much of this, you know, where I'm kind of restating the same thing. I'm trying to have a fluid line. That's something that's challenging for me. So now I have my shapes, and so I'm just going to go item by item or vegetable by vegetable. So if I imagine there is and I'm going to draw it in for you so you can see what I'm doing. If I imagine there is a axis driven through here, this is what my axis would be. And then my next question to myself is one end closer to me than the other? And you know, with photos it's often hard to gauge, so you just do your best. I would say that this end, the butt of it, is probably a little bit closer than that. And so I'm going to start arcing my cross contours this way, you know, as if it's like this. And see, that's the beauty of a sketch session. You can try it out both ways, and then, you know, throw away the try-out versions. But then you kind of experience, or like through experience learned which way it is. Sometimes you just can't think it out in your head. You have to actually try out, okay, what does it look like if I arc them this way? And what does it look like if I arc them the other way? So I don't know if you can tell, the cool thing about using an old-fashioned dipping pen, I hope this is, yeah, I think it's focused, is that you get these beautiful variations of a thicker mark and then a really thin mark. And sometimes you have like these happy or unhappy accidents of just like ink gushing out, and you have to make that work. And to me, like, that makes for a really interesting drawing. So that's why I'm like, it's very satisfying for me to draw with a traditional nib. And if you're curious about what kind of nibs to use and what other pen and ink tools exist, I invite you to get on my mailing list, because if you sign up, you get this really great tool guide, pen and ink tool guide, where I explain what types of pen and inks there are and what they're good for and which ones are better for what. And it's 11 pages long, so really extensive. Okay, so now I'm at the next radish, and I'm thinking, oh, I guess I'm not. I guess I'm moving on to the next one. 5 minutes is short. So for this one, I have 10 minutes, so I can get much more granular now. Let me just switch paper. And the paper I'm using, in case you're interested, is like a pen and ink Bristol type paper. Since I have a little bit of extra time here, I'm going to begin with a graphite underdrawing. Not crazy long, just, you know, to get some more specific shapes. So the same thing with these. These are supposed to be sweet potatoes. To me, they look like yam, but what do I know? At the farmer's market, the sign said white sweet potatoes. So there you have it. So the thing about these white sweet potatoes that's good is that, again, they have like these striations. So if you look at the mouse, the cursor, see like right here, this here, these things, and they're already stretching across and over. So you can use those to help you out to understand which way you need to stretch your cross contours. So if the rubber band thing isn't making sense to you, or you know, it's still a challenge, another analogy that I like to use is like if you sliced through, like if you took a knife and you sliced through perpendicular to your axis, would you see the face of the cut, or would you only see the edge of the cut? And that helps you then draw. So again, let's think about our axis. So we have here, this is our central axis, so we definitely have a right lean. On this one we have the opposing lean, but not quite as steep. Thinking about my end points. And then the question is there one end, like is this end closer, or is that end closer, or are they about flush? And to me it looks about flush. Here obviously this is closer. So having gone through this, I'm going to switch now into my ink. Let myself ink. Oops, come on. First, inking the outer contours. And again, I'm trying to pull in a nice smooth line. I'm not trying to go scratch, scratch, like no chicken scratch. You can restate things in like a searching way. That's really fine. Like if you want to have a more loose look, you know, that's fine. But like none of that. This here, that usually doesn't make a very appealing finish. Okay, so let's see. I'm starting to circle. I'm starting to feel out these ellipses, what they would look like. And you don't have to draw all the way across. That starts to look pretty geometric, generic. You can find maybe where's the more shadowy side and emphasize them there. And by then kind of stacking your cross contours closer and closer together in one area, they can start to look like shadow even. So that would be cross contour hatching then. And right now I'm just allowing myself to play with what does it look like if I'm kind of free in my application, like I'm not super careful, like what effect does that create? And so I'm also going to start throwing in some length cross contours. These are the across ones, right? That go across the form. So I'm going to look for some some length contours, because those are great to indicate any dips and bumps along the way. Again, you don't have to carry them all the way through. Or you can kind of seek out, is there a very pronounced dip someplace? That's where I'd focus on those length cross contours. And the cool thing about the root vegetables is that they're so forgiving. You know, you can make mistakes, and still make the drawing work, you know. Let's go to the other one. So see, if I slice through this one here now, my slice would go something like that. It's not a perfect ellipse because it's not a perfect cylindrical item. It's ellipse-ish, no, it's cylindrical-ish, sorry, not ellipse-ish. And you can just pull out certain segments. So again, I'm allowing myself to play. I'm allowing myself to see, okay, what happens if I only use certain segments? Do I like it better if I draw the whole circumference of my cross contour? Do I like it better if I only have little snippets? Do I like it if I have multiple snippets? Does that work? So I was talking to my students about this today. It's so good, it's so healthy to foster a relationship, a non-performative relationship with your sketches, meaning that not every sketch that you create needs to look like a finished piece of art that could go in a frame, because it's just too much pressure, and it also keeps you from learning. It keeps you from experimenting. And so I hope that the effect of me sitting here and doing, like, you know, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not that great, these kind of good drawings that it gives you permission to experiment as well. You know, it's going to be our little secret that we create shitty drawings at times, and we'll put them in the trash, or we have a little burning. But you know, like, what's the use in pretending like you're perfect if it keeps you from not getting better? Anyways, so if anybody's watching live, give me a hell yes. Or anything, or disagree with me. You know, you're totally allowed to disagree with me, I guess. Oops, that's not what I meant. Sorry. Come on back. There you are. I wanted to click off. Okay, so 10 minutes for this one. You can choose to create the whole arrangement, or you can just pick one or two. Hell yes, Bill. Hell yes, Edward. I'm assuming it's Ed. So glad you're on the same page with me. And Patty, totally. That's exactly what I was talking about to my students, how, you know, we only see the front end of the business, of the artist's business, which is so understandable, you know, like, we want to present ourselves in our best light. And yet, you know, if you don't know any better, you'll believe that like their drawings always look this way, and it's just not true. Ted, oh sorry, Ted. Nice to meet you. Glad you're here. Okay, so I have my lay-in. I'm thinking now about those 2 points I was saying earlier. I have a left lean on this axis. This one is fairly horizontal. This one is pretty much upright. And then this one is hard to tell. This one is kind of non-consequential. So let me begin inking, and then we'll go from there. And so since Patty, since you're here, I have to share what I shared with you with the rest of the rest of who's here. So I came across this really neat etymological insight. So I'm a total word nerd, and I like to know where words come from and what their origins are and what their other uses have been. And so the other day I came across the word radical, and I learned that the word radical originates from Latin radix, and radix means at the root. And so to be radical means to seek change at the root. And of course I love that. I count myself to be a radical. But then like it made me immediately think about radishes, you know, especially the German word for radishes, Radieschen. So Radieschen and radix, it just sounded really close together. And so it made me think about radical radishes. They're going to change the world. And it just made me chuckle. And now my friends and I, we're forging a group called the Radical Radishes. We don't quite know yet what we're going to do in this group because neither of us can sing or play a musical instrument, but that's besides the point. Okay, so here I have my contours inked in. So now I've thought about the left to right, right? So now I'm thinking about, is there a forward, backward orientation as in a pitch, you know? Is it leaning this way or that way? Or is it neither? And if I don't know, I'll try both versions. I'll have a little sub drawing over here and just say, okay, let me make a mini drawing over here. I can't quite tell what's happening. And I'm gonna try one this way. And then I'm gonna do a second one. I'm gonna start doing it this way. And then I'm gonna choose which one's looks more right to me. I'm gonna go with this one. No, I'm gonna change my mind. I'm actually gonna go this way. And if, like, here's the thing, if your eye level is going straight through here, then you might have lines that arc up above the eye level and lines that arc down below the eye level. So, but I think I'm gonna keep them arcing up. And then here I have this little dip, so I'm going to try and work that in. And so, I don't know, I said it earlier, but maybe it's something to gloss over and kind of forget. But the thing about cross contours, they're most important at the edges, as in, like, you know, the outer edges. It's not so important that you have them in the middle of your shape. It's important that they curl just so as they're meeting the outer contour. That's really where it'll make a difference. I like the one in the back, so I'm going to see if I can use the last few minutes to get to that one a little bit. So if any of you take me up on playing with these little radishes and making them into mice or hamsters, or I don't know what you come up with, I'd love to see that. So if you want to post them on Instagram and tag me, or if you want to email them to me or DM me with them, I would love to see if they sparked your imagination. And even if you just kept them as radishes, then that's fine too. I'd like to see that too. See, so here I'm trying, like, what happens if I arc these down? Here I'm arcing them up. So then it makes it look like it's crunching in on itself. And that's interesting, but that's not really what I want. So I'm gonna go back over and say, no, that's what I want. So ink, you know, you can still correct things. It just depends on how clean you want it to look. Like if you want to have the super clean look, then you gotta do all your thinking in pencil. I have a former student of mine who's so talented with pen and ink. Her name is Magdalena Nilges, and she's on Instagram as Maln, M-A-L-N. She often posts little videos of her doing pen and ink sketches of just, like, you know, forest scenery. So if you're enjoying the kind of pen and ink element of tonight, go check out what she's up to. see if I can do something with that potato back here. The other thing that's neat about potatoes and sweet potatoes is you can combine contour fun with cross contour fun. So contour fun would be like, of course, outer edges, but then like the edges of the little sprouts, and then you can, you know, work across the form and play around it with like that. Okay. So again, I'm going to begin in pencil. So what I recommend, and I do this most of the times, that, you know, of course it depends on how much you want to zero in on these skills that we're practicing, but what I recommend is that you begin by just drawing along, you know, kind of listening and drawing along and kind of taking it in as we go, kind of letting that information wash over you as I talk. But then it's really a good idea to come back and either, two things you can do, either like find the drawing that you had the most potential for and pause it and spend some more time on it, or start a second version of it, or /and rewatch the intro where I showed you that image about how cross contours behave, and then pick one of them and do it again. You know, because the way our brain works, we can only take in so much information in one fell swoop, and the rest gets kind of canceled out, blocked out. And then we get frustrated, like, oh, you know, I thought I did this class and I thought I was going to learn this, and but you're still struggling. And like, you want to think, well, of course, it's going to take more than just one time. It's going to take multiple times. So that's what I recommend. Let me scoot this over just a little bit. Okay. So I got my underdrawing. I was clear about the 2D orientation of my items. And by the way, you can have items with multiple axes. So let's pretend like this tail was much thicker. Then you'd have an axis for this, and then you'd have an axis for this thicker part of the tail, and then you'd have another axis for this, you have another axis for that. So if you wanted to cross contour that tail, every segment gets its own axis. So another thing to pay attention to as you're drawing, especially if you're drawing with a medium that you don't use as often, so maybe you are working along in pen and ink with me and it's like one of your first times using pen and ink, notice what scale is working for you. You know, like I'm drawing fairly large, and usually for pen and ink drawings, I prefer a pretty small scale. So rather than getting annoyed with whatever you're noticing, just notice it and then file that information away for the next time, saying, you know what, last time I drew too large and it just didn't, like it felt like everything was too spread out. So let me not do that again. Let me make it smaller, or whatever it may be. So rather than kind of going down the rabbit hole of judging and, you know, throwing a hissy fit over it not working right, become curious. Like, okay, why is it not working right? What are you so irked by? And then when you find the answer, or at least you know your best guess, then try out a different way of doing it. see on that potato, you can see me playing with pressing harder and getting a thicker mark, and pressing lighter, getting a thinner mark. Like that variation, that's really hard to get if you just have like a fine liner. Like fine liners are built to give you a very even line. That's their whole purpose. So if you keep using fine liner and you're annoyed with the fact that the fine liner just looks too mechanical, it's because you're using a fine liner. So instead, pick up either a traditional pen and ink, like I'm using, or a brush pen. Brush pens, they're great at varying the thickness of your lines. So I'm kind of making myself slow down and enjoying the nature of my chosen medium for the evening. Like I've given you some good information, some good technical insight. So now I'm allowing myself to kind of enjoy the process. And so again, here I'd say the orientation is like this. This is closer to me, the green part is closer to me, and the tail is a little bit further away from me. Not a ton, but that's how I'm kind of now thinking about, okay, then that makes it have these kinds of cross contours. So again, the thought experiment, if I slice through it, how would I see that face of the slice? Or would I see the face of the slice? So anytime you're kind of stumped for what to draw, and you're starting to have like thoughts like, oh, I'm not going to draw tonight, I don't need to, but you're kind of aspiring to drawing more, I recommend you just grab a vegetable. It doesn't even have to be a root vegetable. It can be like a bell pepper, something that's lumpy and bumpy, and do some of these cross contour studies. And the cool thing is, when you do this on your own, now that you kind of know how to do it, and you don't have me talking all the time, you can really sink into a more non-analytical or non-linear part of the brain, and kind of let your intuitive side judge also which way these contours should be wrapping. So yes, there is definitely an analytical element to this lesson. And I totally recommend digging in and understanding, learning to understand that. But then when we draw, we kind of want to let go of that too. You know, like you want to know it, but then we want to throw it out of the window again, and then kind of work from an intuitive understanding. So I know this is, I understand that I'm saying something that's contradicting, but that's art for you. In art, there always like this knife's edge that we walk. We want to be loose, but we also want to be analytical. And so my point being, if you don't have somebody chatting away, if you do this on your own on an evening where you just want to draw something, that would be the perfect way to kind of dip into that. So the other thing that you can start to do now is, any pen and ink artists, it doesn't even have to be pen and ink, anybody who uses linear or creates linear drawings, look at how they use cross contours. So the next time you're scrolling on Instagram and you're seeing somebody's pen and ink drawing or a linear drawing that you like, pause the scroll and notice, okay, I see here they're using just segments of a cross contour. Oh, interesting, they're using the whole cross contour. So kind of become a detective. Oops, gotta get my head out of here. And I think that's sometimes tricky, you know, because it's so easy to be wowed by people's artwork that your brain just kind of wants to hold on to the, wow, this is so amazing. And then, which is nice, it's like, it's pleasurable, but if you can make that conscious switch of like, oh, hold on a second, I'll go back to thinking how amazing this is in a second, but let me just kind of pick this apart a little bit. Why is this so cool? Okay, so some potatoes. So with something that we usually think of as simple, as boring, as basic, become curious about how it's different from what you expect it to be. Like, you know, it's this idea of, oh, apples are round. Well, are they? Most apples aren't round. They have a very particular shape. The same is true for potatoes. They're not all round. Let me get my dipping ink. So I chose this picture because it has many of the little sprouts. So here you can have a lot of fun with the little sub-elements. So I'm right-handed, obviously, so I need to work from the left to the right. Otherwise, I'll smudge my ink as I go. I have to be pretty organized. Oh, and axis goes this way on this one. It even has this little dot right in the front. It's very useful to have this little dot. So when you're working with a quill, you want to kind of sink into trusting your hand and kind of pulling your marks with deliberation. That's not too cocky. It's like one nice pull, and you're varying the pull as you go. You're not going too slow, because then it's going to start sputtering your car, your line. You don't want to go too fast, because then you're going to miss the scenery. If you take my drift. So you kind of need to send your eyes just a little bit ahead of where your nib is going. And then hope that you'll stay on the road. Well, as long as you get to the destination, if the road, if you kind of get off of the path a little bit, that's totally fine. So I don't know if you can tell, like with my lines, I can pull my lines and I can push my lines. So this is how you know that you're working with a drawing nib. So a little bit of drawing nib 101. You want to have a nib where you can pull and push your line. If you can only pull, it means you're working with a calligraphy nib. And those, they're not that great for drawing. First of all, because they're made to be to create uniform marks, so you can't create accents. And aside from not being able to create accents like thick, thin, that kind of line variation, you can only pull it. So, you know, we don't always go in one direction when we draw. We want to go in all kinds of directions when we draw. So here you see that kind of streak by this little, see this little, another sprout thingy right next to the sprout thingy here is another streak. So that streak helps me understand it's going this way. But again, if you want to become technical about it, it's like this end is closer, this end is further away. We're seeing this edge closer to us, this edge. So that's why I'm curving it left. So I've noticed that my personal taste is that I like segments, like little cross contour segments, and kind of stacking them together, arranging them together. I enjoy that more than having full cross contours that go all around. Now, I was laughing because Bill, I saw your comment about the scratch. I know, it's like sound bath for artists. And if I can get my soapbox out, my well-worn soapbox that I like to climb onto, I think that's why drawing is so amazing. I mean, you know, obviously drawing is just fun because you can create things and you pay attention to all the beautiful stuff that's around you. But the other superpower of drawing to me is that it's dealing with tangible things, like actual paper, actual graphite on paper or ink nib on paper. And it reminds us that we are like in these physically limited bodies. We're not virtual beings that work at the speed of light. You know, we're working at a physical body speed, and we're bound by that. And I can't think of a better way than drawing to remind me of that. I mean, you can totally get that also with, like, you know, pottery and working in clay, and Bill, you're working with jewelry, like you have that materiality. So, but for me personally, it's drawing, at least right now. It's like all, it's not, and again, it's not, it's not just the touch element, you know, like the tactile element, but it's also that, like all the senses, you know, you can smell the ink, or I don't know what other drawing materials you can smell. Well, oil paint, you know, you could smell the oil paint and you can hear the sound. So see, these little snippets that I was drawing, they would go from the front pole to the back pole. Well, yeah, Patty, and you get this when you work with fabric. So Patty is a fashion designer, Bill is a jewelry designer. So I'm sure we have all kinds of creatives drawing along with us. So you guys know. It's like our superpower to stay somewhat centered and calm, or like it's like a little thing we can tap into to kind of calm down again. Okay, so the axis is going this way. I feel like it's tilting back. So I'm gonna arc my lines this way. And so I don't know if you can tell, like I'm making my hand go around the whole ellipse. But I'm only touching down in certain areas. But is this the last one? Let's see, what time is it? Yeah, this is the last 10 minutes. Wow. Patty's on it. Patty's Google stalking people. I love it. Okay, let's do some underdrawing first. Okay, so I got my underdrawing. I'm thinking about axis. So again, it's so easy because we have, like, the axis is spelled out for us already. From green to tail, what's that angle? And then again, the question is one of these ends closer to me or not? And I don't think it is. I think this is like, you know, pretty much flush with my picture plane. So picture plane is just your imaginary frame that you're looking through, or imaginary camera lens that you're looking through. Then here, our axis is like so. And again, maybe the butt is a little bit closer to us. So beginning on the contours, trying to find that good speed to pull my lines with. So I have one more analogy for you for the cross contours that I just remembered that I haven't mentioned yet, I don't think. So of course the first one is rubber bands. The second one is thinking like you're slicing through and imagining what the face or the edge of the cut would be like. And then the third idea is that your pen is a little ant, or a little microbe, even better, microbe, crawling along the circumference of your item. And the only thing is that this ant is programmed to either go perpendicular to the axis or from north to south pole. This little ant has an agenda, or is bound by rules. Ah, what the? Yeah, see, this can't erase that. But that's, you know, that's the price of admission for working with pen and ink. Sometimes it works out just beautifully, and other times you make mistakes for all the world to see. Okay, got my contours, so let's deal with some cross contours. So I'm going to try wrapping it this way. So again, I said this earlier on, you try different versions. You can make a little sub-drawing over here and ask yourself, what does it look like if you wrap things this way? Do you like it? Or do you prefer it if you wrap things this way? And then whatever you like better, whatever seems to be making more sense to you, that's the one we go with. I'm going to go with this one. Makes more sense to me. So when in doubt, try things out, you know. That's kind of like what I tell my students. Like, I can tell you as much information until the cows come home. But unless you actually try it out, it's going to be meaningless. See, that's why I like these sketch sessions, because it's not just me giving you a video and then you passively consume this video. It's like, no, we're doing it together and you're learning, you're seeing how it applies as you're getting the information. And you're noticing right away, oh, that I don't get that part. Or like this here, like I thought I understood it, but now I don't know what to do. And that allows you then to dig deeper right there, rather than having to find out later on when you don't have the information handy anymore. And again, root vegetables are just so forgiving. You can make it work even if you made a mistake. You can still pull it off. There's no root police coming, and you can play with it. And if you do want more of a refresher of this more technical information, a little bit more, there is a video I made a couple months ago about drawing from imagination using cross contours and center lines. So you can watch that. There's another one about cylinders and ellipses. So that would be useful. So if you want to dig in more, there's more stuff I have for you. Or as I said, rewatch the beginning of tonight. So where their tails enter into the radish, that's a really good place to put one of your cross contours. Because it kind of explains how the two forms are joined together. Trying to get this little bump here. Use some length cross contours for that. And you can keep working on these, like you can even keep working on these without the reference. Sometimes you don't even need the reference, and you can just kind of go on gut level, like what does this need? Where do I want to space my cross contours closer together, further apart? And so some of you've been sending me your hedgehog pictures from last week and reworks, and I love that. Chris, I think it was you. I love the final version. I don't know if you're here tonight, but I love that final version. And you know, just keep working on these drawings. Okay, well, there you have it. Let me switch over real quick. I hope this was fun. I hope this was useful. I know I made a big deal about, ooh, root vegetable, best thing since sliced bread, but I think it is. And as I said, understanding cross contours is just such a useful tool. And in my email that I wrote out this morning, I said it's like one of those ninja tricks, you know, like everybody kind of gets the idea of like, oh yeah, you draw outlines as in like the contours, and that's how you make a drawing. But people don't understand that you can draw these lines that don't really exist. You know, it's not like the turnip runs around with lines drawn across. They're imaginary, you know. And so once you understand that you can draw these imaginary lines, whether they're going across or along, you have this kind of secret trick up your sleeve that you can create illusions of form with. And so as the thing that I wanted to prompt you to do one more time is look at the masters. So I mentioned Leonardo da Vinci. Look at his pen and ink drawings, like trees that he's done, use this inside. His Madonna heads use this inside. And then Heinrich Kley, of course, is the super famous kind of cartoonish satirical drawing artist. And so anyways, I'd love to see what you did tonight. If you feel like sharing, tag me on Instagram at Kira Studios. You can DM those drawings to me. You can post them as a story. Just kind of let me know, because I want to give you a digital high five. I want to kind of acknowledge that you worked hard and that you are the kind of person who keeps drawing every week. And if you're not already on my mailing list, I'd love to have you on my mailing list, because I'll send you little stories every week and will remind you about what topic we're working on for the sketch session. If I have any classes coming up, you'll be the first to know. You'll be the first to get a discount on it. And of course, as I said earlier, you're going to get the pen and ink tool guide. I'm giving you some more information on how to use the different pen and ink tools that are out there. So next week we're gonna do the figure, and we're gonna do knees. So we're gonna focus on an anatomy lesson on how to work, how to draw your knees better, or people's knees better. And I hope you'll be back for that. And if you have requests, you can always send me requests. So so good to draw with you. Had a ton of fun. And again, I want to see your drawings. Don't be shy. Tag me. Okay, take care. See you soon.